You're white.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yes, oh yes, oh yes. United States District Court for the Western District of North Carolina is now sitting for ceremonial purposes. The Honorable Robert J. Conrad Jr., Judge of the United States District Court presiding. All persons having business before this honorable court are admonished to draw near, and they shall be heard. God save these United States and this honorable court.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. The Mecklenburg County Superior Court is now sitting for ceremonial purpose. The Honorable Casey Visor, Judge, Mecklenburg County Superior Court presiding. All persons having business before this court are admonished to draw near, and they shall be heard. God save these United States and this honorable court. Please be seated and come to order.
Welcome, everybody, to this wonderful ceremony. Today, we gather together in a joint ceremonial meeting of the federal and state courts to recognize the extraordinary life and service of one of our number, Robert Carl Hord Jr. This memorial service is a time-honored tradition of the Mecklenburg County Bar, where the brothers and sisters of the bar pay homage to the life and times of one of their profession, of one who has shared this unique discipline that binds us together. Today, we recognize that life and those achievements as a matter of public record and for the sake of our historic and corporate memory. We welcome those in attendance here in the Jonas Courthouse wing. This is only the fourth time we have been privileged to hold a memorial service in federal court. It is an honor for us to do so. We also have folks attending virtually, and welcome to you as well. And I would ask you who are attending virtually to mute your microphones during the duration of this ceremony.
On behalf of the Mecklenburg County Superior Court, I am delighted to co-preside with Judge Conrad over this ceremonial proceeding. And in keeping with the tradition of the Mecklenburg County Bar, I will now recognize Fred W. DeVore III, our Mecklenburg County Bar President.
May it please the court, my name is Fred DeVore. May I address the audience?
You may.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Fred DeVore. I'm the current president of the Mecklenburg County Bar. We certainly welcome the friends and colleagues and acquaintances, Robert C. Hord Jr. We offer our deepest condolences and sympathies to the family. As Judge Conrad and Judge Casey said, this is a time-honored tradition in our bar. We're pleased and flattered to have this opportunity to honor him and to recognize you as his closest friends. This time I'd recognize George Hanna, member of our Memorials Committee. Thank you, Your Honor.
And Mr. Hanna, if you would come to the podium.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I address the audience? My name is George Hanna. I am a longtime member of the Memorials Committee, and I am particularly proud to be here today to represent the Memorials Committee and the bar for two reasons. But before I get into those two reasons, let me take a moment to say how much we appreciate the support that we've gotten, the Memorials Committee has gotten from Judge Visor first, who has actually kind of volunteered to get involved in this and become a member of the committee. Thank you. And but particularly to Judge Conrad. A couple of years ago, Judge Conrad came up to me after a memorial ceremony that he had been attending and said, would we welcome him as part of the committee? A federal district court judge? I said, absolutely. And so he signed on to become a member and an active member of our committee, served as chair of the committee for a period of time, and then actually agreed to make these facilities available to have this memorial. And so we wouldn't be able to do this without the support of Judge Conrad. And so thank you, sir, and thank you too for
Mr. Hanna, if you would get to the point that you're here.
I didn't tell him I was going to do that because I think he would have said, no way. But as Fred mentioned, this is a strong tradition of this bar. I've gone back and checked, and you can go back into the 20s and 30s and 40s, and there would be sporadic resolutions adopted by this bar. And then sometime in the late 60s, early 70s, around in there, and many of you remember the former executive director of the bar, Mary Howerton, who kind of started this in a more formal fashion. And it has persisted since. So we're basically in 50 years of this bar doing this. And I can't tell you how proud I am of this tradition. I mean, it creates an historical record, and it gets us a chance to honor our comrades and our colleagues. And I have looked, this has been kind of a search for me. I have looked to see what other bars do this, and I can't find one, and I don't understand it because this is such a meaningful tradition. But secondly, not just the tradition, but also to be here representing the service of Bob Hord. I knew Bob. I considered him a professional friend. We tried a case together one time when we were both very young lawyers. Bob at the time was with the firm of Boyle, Alexander, and Hord, and we were representing two professionals in town who had a contract dispute. And Bob had an additional pressure than I did because Irvin Boyle was with him in court. He was not helping. He was simply observing. And so the pressure of having your senior partner there, good gracious, I can't imagine that. But the toughest part was we were trying the case before a formidable, well-known, irascible Superior Court judge named Frank Snepp. I think many of you older folk will remember Frank Snepp. And frankly, we were a lot more worried about Frank Snepp than we were about our clients or each other. I mean, you know. So Frank Snepp heard the evidence. It was a non-jury trial. He invited us back after and said, I cannot understand why this case has not been settled. And let it be known that we definitely were dropping the ball and that we needed to settle, which we did. And we both, I think, walked out feeling good about the case, feeling probably counting it on our list of victories, both of us. And I've always admired Bob, and I knew what a consummate professional he was. So he will definitely be missed. At this time, I'd like to turn the proceedings over to Maury Johnson, longtime partner of Bob's, who will present the resolution. Maury. Thank you. May I address the audience, please?
You may.
Thank you.
May it please the court, Bob's family, friends, colleagues, and members of the Mecklenburg County Bar. My name is Maury Johnston. I practiced law in Charlotte since 1966, and it is my privilege to present this resolution on behalf of myself, the law firm of Johnston, Allison, and Hord, and the Mecklenburg County Bar in honor and memory of an outstanding member of the bar and my longtime dear friend, Bob Hord. Before I do so, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce and welcome the members of his family. His wife, Katie, his daughter, Kitty, I'm sorry, Kitty's the wife, Katie's the daughter.
That's okay, it's close enough.
Don't we wish? Thank you. And Katie's husband, Dan Simon, their son, Rob, and his wife, Greta. Robert Carl Howard Jr. was born on September 26, 1940, and died unexpectedly on Saturday morning, May 30, 2020, at the age of 79. Bob worked a full day at the office the day before his death. His timesheet from Friday was dutifully completed and sitting on his desk when I stopped by his office on Monday morning, still in disbelief that Bob was gone. Bob was a native of Charlotte and attended Myers Park High School and Davidson College. Thus, you can see Bob's roots to Charlotte were very, very deep and strong. In fact, Bob met his wife, Kitty, while he was at Davidson and she at Queens. They were married for 57 years and, as indicated, had 2 children. Katie Hord Simons, a lawyer who is married to Dan, and Bob's son, Rob, who is married to Greta. Katie and Daniel have 2 beautiful daughters, Rebecca and Meredith. Rob and Greta have 4 handsome, rambunctious sons, Thompson, Davis, and the twins, Reed and Jack. Bob loved them all. After graduation from Davidson in the ROTC program in 1962, Bob attended UNC School of Law, graduating in 1965. He then entered the Army in the Adjunct General Corps and rose to the rank of captain. In November 1967, Bob returned to Charlotte and began his legal career with Fairley, Hamrick, Monteith, and Cobb. He later joined Boyle and Alexander as a partner. Being a native Charlottean myself and having attended Myers Park with Bob, I naturally knew him in my youth, but did not know him well. My true friendship with Bob developed when we were both returned to Charlotte in 1967 to practice law. About 20 years later, in 1988, a friend and client of Bob's approached me and my partner, Jim Allison, and explained that Bob was handling all of his legal work quite well, but that he was giving Bob more than Bob could really handle. Unfortunately, Bob's boss, B. Irvin Boyle, was not interested in expanding the firm and giving Bob any help. The friend asked if Jim and I would consider inviting Bob to join the firm so that he would have more horsepower to handle the work. We approached Bob about the prospect and he quickly expressed interest, but said he couldn't commit until he talked with Irvin. Bob soon reported back and Irvin said, "Yeah, go for it. That'd be great. But do they have room for me too?" In fact, is it okay if I bring Leah with me? Well, so it was our good fortune to not just get Bob, but 2 other well-established and stellar members of the bar. 32 years later, what is now Johnston, Allison, and Hord has grown from 8 attorneys to more than 45 attorneys, due in no small part to Bob's leadership. Bob was a consummate gentleman and highly respected attorney who unselfishly gave of his time and energy to the bar. His favorite bar activity was serving on the calendar committee, which he chaired for several years. For those of you that are not familiar with the calendar committee, back in the dark ages of the 60s and 70s, the trial lawyers self-policed the scheduling of trials and motions on the court's document. The committee held weekly meetings with all the lawyers on the calendar to determine which cases would go forward and which cases would be continued. Well, as you would imagine, there was a great deal of jockeying among the lawyers, since half wanted to go forward and half wanted to be continued. So, you know, the lawyers would present their reasons and their excuses of why they might need a continuance. Needless to say, they were very creative in the excuses they put forth to the committee in support of their request. The committee very actively policed all requests for delay, even to the extent of keeping a record of the excuses that they had heard. The operation of the calendar committee and its oversight of calendar call hearing was not merely instrumental to the orderly operation of our court system, but it provided a meaning social event which fostered civility among members of the bar. I miss Bob's recounting of his many calendar committee stories. But, you know, Bob was proud to be a Charlotte native, and he had an incredible appreciation for and recollection of the intimate detail of our fair city, its history, its prominent citizens, Myers Park High's athletic program, the current status of his 1958 classmates, and the best places in town to buy a meat and 3 lunch. Bob supported his beloved Charlotte in so many ways. Through Covenant Church, where he served as chair of the sessions and as an elder emeritus. Through the Kiwanis Club for over 50 years, including as its president and chair of its foundation, which provided him with the opportunity and religiously and reliably to solicit his friends, I'm sure many, including here, those of us here, to support the annual azalea sale and the barbecue fundraiser. Shortly before Bob left us, I had the pleasure of accompanying him to his beloved farming. The understanding was that I'd go down and do a little fishing while Bob cut the grass. So I went down, started fishing, and after a modest period of time, I went to check on him. And what I observed put a smile on my face that day, and it still does today. Because there was Bob perched on his little green tractor, wearing a straw cowboy hat, throttle wide open as if he was Richard Petty, and of all things, wearing a loaded pistol on his hip. He could not have been any happier than the proverbial kid in a candy store. That is how Bob should be remembered. How can I describe Bob to those who may not have known him well? The first word that comes to mind is kind. He was kind and courteous to everyone, especially to other lawyers, adversaries, as well as his friends. He was dependable. His word was his bond. He was financially prudent, which is a Bob way of saying he was tight. He was dedicated to serving his clients. He was a scholar of law, particularly real estate. He was a family man above all. He adored Kitty, Katie, Rob, Daniel, Greta, and the grandkids. He participated in all aspects of the children's and grandchildren's lives, whether coaching their little league teams, fishing with them, or snow skiing with them at Beach Mountain. Following Bob's death, countless lawyers and friends have shared with me how Bob meaningfully and often humorously touched their lives. However, Bob's 12-year-old grandson, Davis, perhaps said it best when he posted the following memorial about his pops. He wrote, "When I was younger, Pops and I were at the farm, and he showed me how to measure a fish with my arm. I never really understood, but now I think I do, besides the fact of measuring the fish. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but I think now that it was the measurement of life, no matter how long or short. It still is a life, like it still would be a fish. I talk to him sometimes and just think on how he is up there. I like to think his soul has transformed an angel and he is in a newborn body. Davis Hord, love you, Pops." To that and to Davis, I can only say, Amen. Your Honor, it is with a deep sense of friendship, admiration, and gratitude for the life and legacy of Robert Carl Hord Jr. that I and the undersigned president of the Mecklenburg County Bar and the chair of the Mecklenburg County Bar Memorials Committee respectfully move to file and inscribe this resolution memorial in the minutes of this court with a copy to be kept in memorials of deceased attorneys with the office of the Clerk of Superior Court in Mecklenburg County, and provide copies of this resolution to Bob's family. Respectfully submitted this 30th day of September, 2021. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnston. It is customary at this time to ask if there's anyone else who wishes to say a few words about Bob Hord. Before we do that, I think Judge Weiser and I wish to say a few words as well. My connection to this service is twofold. One is I have a profound appreciation for the Memorial Service Committee of the Mecklenburg County Bar. This is one of the finer things we do as a bar, recognize one of our own. And in doing so, we inspire and encourage other lawyers, especially young lawyers. And I hope in a small way that we comfort Bob Hord's family. My second connection to this service is through my working relationship and friendship with Katie. In a city full of bureaucrats, Katie gets things done, and she is the go-to person in the administrative office of the courts for districts like ours when we are in need. We reached out to two of Katie's bosses as we approached this ceremony. Katie worked for the director of the administrative office, a man named Jim Duff, who we all admire and respect. Jim couldn't be here today, but he sent me this note that I wish to read. I understand that you are honoring Bob Hord. I've heard so many wonderful stories about Bob from Katie. Feels like I knew him, and I am certain that I wish I had known him. One true measure of a person's life is how their children have turned out. Jackie Kennedy said, if you bungle raising your children, I don't think whatever else you do will matter very much. Bob Hord did many things well, including, most importantly, he raised a wonderful daughter. I can attest to that. Jim's words are my own, that the characteristics of Bob Hord that were described by Maury Johnston are reflected in the professional excellence and the friendship that people experience dealing with his daughter, Katie. I have daughters, and if they talked about me the way Katie talks about her father, I would be a happy man. The second person I reached out to for purposes of this ceremony was the current director of the administrative office of the courts, who is dealing with the potential for a government shutdown, even as we speak. And once she heard that we were having this ceremony, she left all of the pressing responsibilities of directing the administrative office of the courts to come here and show her friendship and respect to the Hord family, and particularly to Katie Hord. And Judge Ross Moskoff, if you have anything to say at this time, the Western District of North Carolina welcomes you. You may.
It is really a privilege to be here to honor Bob Hord and to honor the Hord family. And while I have never met Bob Hord, I too feel like I knew him through my friendship and my relationship with his daughter, Katie Hord Simon. And when I tell you about the Katie that I know and love, I suspect it will mirror the Bob Hord that you knew and loved. Katie, a lawyer like her dad, began her legal career 150 miles away in Raleigh as a law clerk to federal Judge Earl Britt, though her heart, like her dad's, is forever in the Queen City of Charlotte. And for the last 20 years, she has worked at the administrative office of the U.S. courts in Washington, where she serves as a senior leader in support of the entire federal judiciary. As it turns out, Katie possesses a combination of traits and values that I have come to learn are actually what I will call Hord habits. She is kind, generous, compassionate, and loyal. She cares deeply about her work and the people she works with. A smart yet practical lawyer, she is dedicated to the rule of law, and as one person said of her father, she, quote, possesses an unwavering foundation of always doing the right thing. Like her dad, Katie is not only a mentor, and I understand that Bob Hord truly enjoyed mentoring young lawyers for the Mecklenburg County Bar. Katie is not only a mentor, she's an advisor, a confidant, and a coach to me and to many others in the judiciary, judges and staff alike. She is generous with her time, and she provides her coworkers opportunities to learn, to grow, and to shine. As you heard, Bob worked until the day he died, and without question, his daughter has that same work ethic. As I'm sure Judge Conrad can attest to, Katie's energy and enthusiasm is well known across the entire federal judiciary. She has an incredibly demanding set of responsibilities, and she easily handles complex tasks that would daunt others. And importantly, she is unconcerned with who gets the credit because it's always a team effort, though she's often the one who selflessly burns the midnight oil. And so, as all of us who are daughters know, a father and daughter truly share a special bond. However, I suspect that this father and this daughter didn't always see eye to eye. None really do. So Bob Hord graduated from UNC Law School. Katie was an undergrad at Duke and went to Wake Forest Law School. And I understand that the mere mention of these fierce rivals in the same sentence has been known to spark a brawl in certain parts of this state. But Bob and Katie certainly had much in common, including a passion for life, a devotion to family, and a love of the law to which they both dedicated their professional lives. In the Jewish tradition, the thing we say when someone dies is, "May their memory be a blessing." The phrase is a reminder that the warmth and goodness and love live through the actions and the memories of all of us. The Katie Hord Simon that I know and the heartfelt tributes that I have heard about Bob assure me that all of our lives have been greatly enriched by Bob Hord. May his memory be a blessing to us all.
If it pleases the court, Judge Conrad, I would also like to exercise a personal privilege here. It is truly my honor to be sitting here today to memorialize the man who we're all speaking so kindly about. He was a dear, dear man. Mr. Hord, as I knew him until he forced me to call him Bob once I became a lawyer. Since I was maybe 5 years old when we first met at Covenant Presbyterian Church, and he was a longtime teacher, mentor, coach, friend. Led me, in fact, to the law, led me to what I'm doing now, to the bench. I count him among my top advisors throughout my career. He was always there with not only a good word, but sound advice. And like his son, who is a longtime dear friend, classmate, fraternity brother, roommate, who was also well-liked, well-loved, well-respected in his community, a great contributor to his community, and perhaps the most important thing, a great father to his sons and husband to Greta. And this is widely known around Charlotte. And though they're in different professions, Rob is a real estate developer and restaurateur. And what is known about both of them is that they can always be counted on to lend a hand. They know what they're doing, but they don't. Bob didn't, and Rob does not make you know it, if you know what I mean. He wasn't just a good lawyer, and he wasn't just a good man. He was a pillar of both the bar and the community. And it's been one of the great honors of my life to know him, to have counted on him, and to still count him as one of the biggest influences on me. Katie, Kitty, the family, again, it is such a privilege for me to be here to honor your father. And I don't think that there is a greater tribute, it's already been said, to him than those of you who are sitting right there and the grandchildren that he had that you are parenting now, because it is emblematic of the man that he was. So, thank you.
Customary at this time to ask if there's anyone else who wishes to say anything about Mr. Hord.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Mac.
May I address the It please the court, honored guests. My name is Marty White, and I joined Johnston, Allison & Hord in 2001, 20 years ago. And last April, I became our managing partner. And so it is my privilege and truly an honor to stand here and on behalf of our law firm, Johnston, Allison & Hord, thank you all for being here today. And that goes for the folks in the room as well as those attending online. It is truly a testament to the man, the lawyer that Bob Hord was to see this kind of turnout. And so we as a firm can't thank you enough for being here. Bob was an excellent lawyer. I think we've heard some of that. Given the fact that this is a bar memorial service, I think most people in here know that already. And we've heard about Bob's incredible work ethic. Maury mentioned it, and I can attest to the timesheet being on his desk. When I learned that Bob had passed on a Saturday morning last May, I was in a fog and didn't know what to do, and ended up driving to the office and going to Bob's office. And sure enough, Bob had worked a full day on Friday, and there was his timesheet sitting there. So, but ironically, when I think of Bob, the first things that come to my mind aren't the practice of law, and it don't have anything to do with the law firm, even though Bob was the pillar of professionalism and gave everything he could every day of his professional life for the good of his clients. But those aren't the things that come to my mind. The things that come to my mind are Covenant Presbyterian Church. that Judge Visor mentioned. Bob and I both went to church there together, and I knew if I wanted to find Bob, it'd be at the 11 o'clock service in the balcony on the left-hand side. Every Sunday, same pew, same seat. I think about 2012 when a bunch of us from the firm were going skiing in Utah, and Bob said, I'd like to go. Never mind the fact that he was 70 years old. And so Bob went skiing with us at Deer Valley and at Park City and held his own at age 70. Two things in particular I remember about that trip is Bob said he had been to Deer Valley decades ago, and there was one slope that got him that he just fell all the way down, and he was going to get that slope. And so at age 70, there goes Bob Hord down that mountain, and he made it. And the grin on his face was worth $1 million, and that he was done for the day. He said he had. I also remember on that trip that Bob called me, and he was almost confessing to me. He said, Marty, I haven't flown since before 9/11. So can you go with me and make sure I can get in? And so I was honored to be Bob's travel buddy to Utah and back. And of course, we made it just fine. I think about birthdays. So Bob's birthday is September 26th. My birthday is September 27th. And every year we'd swap phone calls and emails about birthdays. And I sure did miss that last week. And the last thing that really pops into mind, and then I'll get to one final story, is about 2 weeks before Bob left us. So this would have been May of 2000. We were in the middle of a pandemic. Our firm was working remotely. No one knew how things were going to turn out. I had just taken over as managing partner at the beginning of April, and he sent me an email telling me that I was doing a good job. And so I have printed that email, and it's worth its weight in gold to me. And it meant a lot then. It means even more now. So there's one final story that I want to tell, and some of you have heard this before, so just bear with me. I think it's worth sharing. So if you know me a little bit, you know I'm a very big Atlanta Braves fan. But Bob might have been a bigger Atlanta Braves fan. The type of Braves fan Bob is that when we were playing against the Dodgers or the Giants or the Padres on the West Coast, he would go home and take a nap, set his alarm, wake up at 10:30, watch the Braves game, go back to sleep, and then be at the office the next day ready to talk about it. I'm not quite on that level. But the other thing about Bob, too, he's very regimented. You could set your watch by the time that he showed up in the parking deck in the morning. You could set your watch by what time he left for lunch, what time he got back from lunch, what time he left in the evening. I already told you I know where to find him, in the church every Sunday. He even had a day of the week during the summer that's when he wore his seersucker suit. So all of that is to say that unlike me and maybe a few others in this room, Bob would never dream of playing hooky from work to go see a Braves game. But several of us, Kenny Lautenschlager sitting there, Mike Wilson, Bob Burchett, we conspired to kidnap Bob. And this it was about 8 years ago. And so we conspired with Kitty, and we conspired with Bob's assistant to make sure his schedule was clear for that day. But Kitty got cold feet. And so the night before, she told Bob, and then Bob told me that was a good thing she did. So sure enough, at 7 o'clock in the morning, we picked Bob up, and thankfully we weren't kidnapping him, because in retrospect, maybe that wouldn't have gone well. But we drove, there we went down I-85, and we went to the Varsity in Atlanta and ate hot dogs and hamburgers. And then we went to the Braves game, and Bob Burchett had pulled some strings, and we had seats right behind home plate. And it was fantastic, except for the fact that it was an afternoon game in downtown Atlanta in the middle of July. So it was probably 100 degrees. I had on shorts, and I made it to about the second inning, and then I retreated back up the stands to find a shady spot. Eventually, everybody else retreated too, but not Bob. Bob had on long pants, and he sat there behind home plate just having a blast watching the Braves play. And I think he made it till about the 7th inning before he finally retreated back. And then when the game was over and the Braves won, I do remember that. That's important. And we drove all the way back, and I had satellite radio in my car. We were able to listen to another ball game as we drove back, and it was really, really a special day. So I tell that story now, not just because it's a fun story, but I think it really proves what Bob meant to us. We're all 30 years, well, maybe not you, Bob, but we're all 30 years younger than Bob, but he meant a lot to us, and we wanted to do something for him, and we wanted to spend time with him. And it was a day that I will never forget, and I will never forget Bob Hord, and it is a privilege to work at the law firm that bears his name. So when this is over, our firm is hosting a reception over at the Charlotte City Club. I understand we may have a kind of pre-reception here at the courthouse, but the judge will tell you more details about that. But eventually this afternoon, we do hope you join us at the Charlotte City Club, and that goes for those of you attending online as well. The City Club is about 2 blocks from here. It's at the corner of Trade and Tryon. When you enter the building, just go to the far bank of the elevators and press the button for LC, which means lower club. And we certainly do hope you can join us. And thank you again for being here today.
Anyone else? You may.
Please the court and distinguished guests and the wonderful Hord family. My name is Patrick Kelly, and I've had the distinguished honor and privilege of working with Bob Hord for over 30 years. For me, Bob epitomized what it means to be a man of integrity. Honest, moral, fair, and decent to his core. We're both veterans, he and I, and so he would likely agree that the highest honor one can give another man is to say that they would trust him with their life in combat. I would follow Bob Hord into combat, because I know that he would have my back, and he would never put his own interests above his fellow soldiers, or for that matter, his fellow lawyers. Heard a little bit of talk about the Hord habits, and I can tell you that there were many Hord habits, most of which I'm not at liberty to talk about here today. But for those of you who know Bob, you'll know what I'm talking about. To Marty's point, for as long as I can remember, Bob would leave work every Friday at 5:50 sharp. Literally, you could set your watch by it, to go to the bank to get cash. No ATM for Bob Hord. So he had to give himself enough time to get to the bank so he could get his money from a real live teller. And then when I would see him leaving, I'd often tease him, about being afraid of technology, and maybe he should think about changing his routine, for the benefits of 24/7 ATM. He could go whenever he felt like it. My assumption in doing that, of course, was that good old Bob was just afraid of technology and didn't want to bother learning how to use an ATM. But when I think about it now, I think what was really going on was that Bob treasured the personal interactions he had with other people. And no doubt the people in the bank knew Bob well, and he knew them. And he looked forward to seeing them every Friday. So in that regard, maybe Bob was actually ahead of his time in his resistance to succumb to the temptation to depend on machines rather than personal human interaction. Up until the very end of his life, Bob was fully engaged in the law firm. And he would faithfully attend all meetings, even ones that he wasn't scheduled to attend. And inevitably, Bob was always the voice of reason, the calm presence in the room. But when Bob felt like the meeting had served its purpose, he had the habit of leaning forward in his chair, clasping his hands on the table, and then, as only Bob could do, uttering this unique throat-clearing, guttural sound. And I probably shouldn't try to demonstrate, but I will. It was something along the lines of I don't even think Bob was aware that he did this, but we all knew his habit, the Hord habit. And so it got to the point where we're in a meeting, and if anyone, we noticed Bob even begin to lean forward in his chair in anticipation of the throat clearing, we would all kind of look knowingly at one another, and more often than not, the meeting would adjourn soon after. I miss Bob every day. He was sort of Mr. Steady, always there for everybody at the firm. Never drawing attention to himself or seeking personal accolades. His sudden departure left a hole in my heart and the hearts of all of us at JH. And you're talking about Bob, but I can almost see him now leaning forward in his chair. So I better end this. Bob, may you rest in peace until we meet again. Thank you.
I speak for this group and the Hord family. And I met Bob Hord in 1954 at Myers Park High School. And I knew he was a born leader while we were there. And every class reunion, he was chairman, very organized, and did a great job. I knew that he was a member of the Kiwanis Club, and we were in Key Club together at Myers Park. And I know he was a pillar at Covenant Presbyterian Church and elected elder many, many times. And he enjoyed playing golf at Charlotte Country Clubs on the weekend. But the honor for me to go is to go down to his farm. And the 63-acre farm that Rob and Bob bought with a big 44-acre pond and his blocks garden that I would help him with. And it's just a pleasure to be down there. It's very relaxing. And I couldn't have found a more honorable man or human being than Bob Hord. Thanks.
You may.
May it please the court. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jennifer Heath. I first saw Bob when I started practicing law in Mecklenburg County in the late 1980s, but I didn't meet him till much later. As did Bob's, my general civil law practice included a great deal of real estate, and hence we both spent a fair amount of time in the Register of Deeds, also known as the RD. In those pre-cell phone days, there was but one telephone in the center of the RD. Someone's laughing because they remember this practice. And the protocol, which was unwritten by the way, was that the person closest to the phone was to take their turn and answer the phone, and then page whomever was requested. In that way, you could learn the name of lots of other fellow lawyers and a few paralegals, based on that informal yet collegial paging system. So I learned who Bob was that way. Additionally, I can't recall chatting with Bob about anything in particular, but a few years later, Kitty and Bob were in attendance at a small party where Lee Heath, my late husband, and I were, and that is how we all finally and formally met. It turned out that Bob and Lee both belonged to Charlotte Country Club and were both constantly in search of golf buddies for a foursome. And so their friendship began. Through the years, Bob would invite Lee to Panthers and Knights games. Lee was always amazed and admired how many statistics Bob knew about each of the players. Now, Lee wasn't too into the details of the players, but Bob would always sort of entertain Lee and say, Lee, don't worry, the Topcats that's kind of change position at the games. So if you don't like this group, the next group you'll like, Lee. But were Lee alive today, I believe that he would have wanted me to make sure that I publicly acknowledged Bob here. Lee used to say of one of my friends that she was my most wholesome friend. I like to think that all of my friends are wholesome, but yet when I was contemplating this loss of Bob, I could not help but think that of all of Lee's friends, I might have designated Bob as Lee's most wholesome friend. Please allow me to justify that by listing a few of Bob's good moral character values, which I can recall, even if they're slightly redundant of what you've already heard. Bob would not play golf until after church on Sundays. That always worked out well for Lee because that way he could sleep in. One December day, I walked outside to get some lunch on the square there at Trade and Tryon on a windy, blustery December day. And there was Bob, all bundled up and ringing the bells next to the famous Salvation Army red kettle. Who else would take time out of their busy law practice to ring bells at lunchtime but Bob? With that smile and that glint in his eyes, I'm sure he collected many donations in addition to mine that day. All of Bob's hard work, intelligence, and determination built a successful law practice. Through the year, Bob and his partners achieved much and created a large and reputable firm. Bob's sage and practical legal advice to Lee was invaluable, especially when it agreed with the free advice I gave Lee. Finally, the way Bob spoke of and treated his family was inspirational. Kitty, Katie, and Rob, I'm sure this is difficult. May you always remember and cherish Bob's unceasing love and devotion to you. Thank you. Thank you.
I would be remiss if I didn't introduce to the Hord family the individual members of this jury who must be frightening you at this point. But in addition to Judge Moskopf, present here to honor Bob Hord are Judge Ken Bell, Judge David Kiesler, Judge Frank Whitney, Judge Dick Voorhees, and Clerk of Court Frank Johns. I hope that Judge Voorhees, Bob Hord's fraternity brother at Davidson, might be willing to say a few words.
Your Honor.
Yes, sir, you may.
Oh, okay.
This is an unexpected honor, but it's one that I cherish. And I love the Hord family. And starting with having been 1 year behind Bob when he helped recruit me to the fraternity at Davidson and showed leadership and set the example for my next 3 years there. And I've known him ever since, enjoyed some collaboration. We had some in my 20 years of practice at Gastonia. Bob and I would trade cross-county cases. And but by so doing, we indicated our respect and appreciation for each other. Bob also accepted my legal secretary and office manager when I came on the bench into his law firm, and she, I believe, served honorably in very, very pleasantly in getting to know Bob personally herself after that. But Bob was an outstanding member of our fraternity. He was a gentleman. He was somebody that would warm your heart with stories, with common friendships. And it's a man that you would indeed appreciate for all that's been said about him today. And I'm honored to be able to say a few words in memory and memorializing that extremely fine gentleman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? You may.
Don't know Bob. Know Bobby. Bobby, I was in the second grade and he was in the first grade. And like most and he was kind to me all my life. I walked with Bobby over to Myers Park Elementary School to try to make the Little League team. He made it and I didn't. We walked back together and he consoled me all the way. If you show me a third grader who's kind to a second grader, I'll show you a guy who will turn out to be all right. And he did. Thank you.
May.
This is Peter. Good looking guy.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Kretzes, and glory be to God for this opportunity to celebrate and to memorialize Mr. Bob Hord. I have heard so much today, and the only thing that I can say is that it's all true. So, my family and I, we go way, way back with the Hords, Mr. Bob Hord, with the Hord family, with Johnson, Allison, and Hord. We first started off with Mr. Irvin Boyle, and when Mr. Irvin Boyle reached an age, he turned us over to Mr. Bob Hord, and that was many, many years ago. I, as well, am a native Charlottean, and I went to East Meck. Don't hold that against me. And we had many, many experiences. I've had many experiences with Mr. Hord probably over the last 7 to 8 years, and him representing us with our legal issues, with our legal situations, especially with regards to real estate. So what I'd like to say about Mr. Hord is that he's a dear friend. I don't like Mr. Hord. I love Mr. Hord. And he was an inspiration to me. Being 28 years younger than him and having lost my father at a young age, I looked up to him. The way he carried himself, the way he prepared himself, the way he represented himself. Always, not sometimes, always asking me how I'm doing. Always asking me how my mom is doing. How's your family? A man of strong faith. Mr. Hord and I connected with that strong faith, having many conversations. And we would always start our sessions personally before we would get into the professional aspect of what we met for. And that foundation that Mr. Hord established, yes, of course, he knew what he was doing as a professional, as an attorney. But above that, as many of you have attested, was the personal touch that he brought. And our family, the decisions that we were making throughout our life were not whether or not we were going to go to Chick-fil-A for lunch. These were life-altering decisions that we were making with regards to our livelihood, with regards to our family property, our history, etc. And Mr. Hord always took the time to make sure to see how we were doing. That personal touch is something that I will never forget, ever. And to all of the younger attorneys that are following behind, each and every one of us are made different. In his image and likeness, we're made the same, but we have different DNA and we're made different. And that's wonderful, because if we were all the same, what a monotonous world this place would be. So with all of us being different, and you're bringing your own approach to the table, to the courtroom, wherever you are, always remember that personal touch. Always remember that kindness. Always remember to ask, how are you today? How's everybody doing today? And that is what, similar to you, Mr. Marty White, is that, yes, Mr. Hord was there for us from the standpoint of legal counsel and legal guidance. But most importantly, he was there for us as a personal friend, as a mentor, and as an inspiration with his kindness. And I spoke to Mr. Hord, we were working on a deal, and I spoke to him about probably 3 to 4 days before I learned that he passed away. And naturally, I was devastated and I was heartbroken. But I don't like to speak of Mr. Hord in the past. I like to speak to him of in the present, because very similar to what you said, ma'am, may his memory be a blessing. As an Orthodox Christian, I like to say, may his memory be eternal. And I know for a fact that Mr. Hord's soul will be eternal, and he will always be a dear friend of mine, and I will always cherish him, and I will always remember him. And before I depart, I'd like to share a story with regards to you, sir, as far as the clearing of the throat. So Mr. Hord and I were working on a deal, and we were in his conference room, and he presented me some information, and I said, now, Mr. Hord, can you guarantee this? And he cleared his throat. He came up before, and as soon as I said the word guarantee, I knew I had made a mistake. And within 2 seconds of me saying guarantee, 0.2 seconds, he allowed me to know, now, Peter, you know that I do not provide guarantees. And I said, Mr. Hord, please forgive me. I knew I made a mistake. I'm so very sorry. So these are the memories that I have of Mr. Hord and everybody here today. It is definitely a testament to him. It's a testament, most importantly, to his soul. It's a testament to his legacy. And may his memory be eternal. May he rest in peace. And to the Hord family, my love, prayers, and thoughts with all of you. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
I have my 45-minute speech, which I'm getting ready. I'm watching the clock, make sure I don't run over. My name is Jim Allison, and I'm part of the Johnson, Allison, and Hord crowd. I would just like to say this is the best celebration I've ever seen of someone like Bob Hord. It is just wonderful, and it really is a celebration. We're going to miss Bob. We all have our memories of Bob, but he was one of the finest people I've ever known. And my office is like it was before they made me retire. It was like 2 doors down from Bob. And whenever I had a problem, I could go speak to Bob. And his door was always open. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for such a great celebration of Bob's life.
So before adjourning, I would like to say that there is a warm-up reception on the 6th floor to the Johnston, Allison, and Hord Bash at the City Club. And there are court security officers and staff that will help you find your way to the 6th floor. On behalf of the judges of the Western District of North Carolina, the court orders that the comments presented at this hour be spread upon the minutes of this federal court, filed with the clerk of court, with copies presented to the family of our departed brother at the bar.
And on behalf of the judges of Mecklenburg County Superior Court, the court orders that the comments presented at this hour be spread upon the minutes of this state court and filed with the clerk of court for Mecklenburg County.
Furthermore, in a moment, I will ask the United States Marshal to adjourn this memorial session of the court and do so in memory of and out of respect for Robert Carl Hord, Jr. Farewell, fare thee well, colleague, and Godspeed.
And likewise, in a moment, I will ask the Mecklenburg County Sheriff to adjourn this memorial session of the court and to do so in memory of and out of respect for our brother and colleague at the bar, Robert Carl Hord, Jr. Fare thee well and Godspeed.
Thornburg, would you adjourn court?
All rise. Yes, oh yes, oh yes. This memorial session, United States District Court for the Western District of North Carolina is adjourned in memory of and out of respect for Robert Carl Hord, Jr.
Sheriff, please adjourn this court in memory of Robert Carl Hord, Jr.
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. This memorial session of the Superior Court of Mecklenburg County is adjourned in memory of and out of respect for Robert Carl Hord, Jr.
There's something on right, get closer. There's something on the 6th floor. Yeah, just take the elevator right down and from there, we can go, yeah, they'll be.